Hello everyone, Ian Wishart here, and I'm delighted to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Take a Pew podcast. And of course I'm joined by my partner in conversational crime, Simon Clark.
Hello everyone. Yes, this is in fact the first international trip for the Pew. We've had a lovely little drive down the M4, crossed over the River Severn and into Wales.
Indeed we have, but fear not listeners, because despite being in a different country, we will still be enjoying all our regular features, including a fondest memory and a perfect picnic.
Yes, as well as the highbrow elements of the show, Is It True? And my random question.
Well, hopefully we might run out of time before we get to that, mate.
Oh, really?
Well, we'll see. Anyway, Simon, we've come to Wales to meet with an amazing guest, haven't we?
We certainly have, mate, because our guest today is none other than Rob Parsons OBE.
You what?
Yes, Rob Parsons OBE.
Oh, you've done it again, haven't you, mate? It's Rob Parsons OBE.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, mate.
Yes, well, now, Rob is a former child as well as a former lawyer. And he's the founder and chairman of the wonderful charity Care for the Family. He's a much-loved and consummate communicator, prolific author, international speaker, and an icon to many. And we can't wait to hear his story. So let's get on with the show. This is the Take a Pew podcast with Rob Parsons.
Rob Parsons OBE.
And here we are in the magnificent Welsh city of Newport. Now, Newport has hosted golf's Ryder Cup. It's been the venue for a NATO summit. But to top all that, it now comes to welcome the Take a Pew podcast. And we're at the head office of Care for the Family to meet its founder and chairman, Rob Parsons. Rob, thank you so much for having us. And please, take a pew.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Rob. It's great to meet you. Perhaps you could just introduce yourself to our lovely listeners.
Yes, so I'm Rob Parsons, founder and chairman of Care for the Family, and married to Diane, married just over 50 years. Must have got married when I was 7 years old, I think. 2 kids, 5 grandchildren. I like being a grandparent. Somebody told me the reason grandparents and grandchildren get along so well is they've got a common enemy. So I like that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rob. Now, I must honestly say that everyone who we've spoken to who knows you speaks about you with such admiration and, above all, warmth. And we're really looking forward to getting the unique Take a Pew insight into your life and times. So let's crack on. And in traditional style, let's start at the very beginning. Where did you come into the world, Rob? I understand it was somewhere west of the Balkan Peninsula.
Well, I was born in Cardiff.
Perfect.
Mum was a cleaner, Dad was a postman. Boy, a little terraced house in Cardiff. No inside toilet, no bathroom, no running hot water, no toilet paper. Don't ask. Except even now I can't look at a copy of the South Wales Echo. But a million memories coming flooding back. So yeah, quite a humble birth, but a happy childhood.
Yeah, that sounds fun. And it brings us on to our first regular feature of the show. And we have a question for you. And the question is...
What were you like at school? Were you a little bit geeky? Or were you a little bit freaky? Or were you a little bit cheeky? What were you like at school?
Yes, Rob, what were you like at school?
Do you know, I really, really wanted to pass the 11 plus exam. But G.K. Chesterton said there are 2 great tragedies in life. One is not to get the desire of your heart, and the other is to get it. And the second I got it, I realised I'd made a terrible mistake. We only had 3 books in our home. My mum could read and write, but not much more than that. And I'm in grammar school, and it's like being on Mars. These kids had books in their homes, their parents could afford tutors, and academically I was rubbish. So my school report when I was 14 records the fact that out of 34 kids in my class, I have come 34th. And my teacher writes on it, and I've still got the report now, disgraceful. He is making no use of what little ability he has. I wouldn't argue with that.
That's very encouraging. What about sort of socially at school? Were you a happy pupil?
Do you know what? The problem is that my form teacher, when he wrote those words, created a box for me. And the bottom was called disgraceful, and the sides were no ability, and the top was rubbish. And because he was a teacher and I was a kid, I got in that box. And I lived in that box. The problem was other kids who were very similar climbed in there with me. So I had a social group that were troublemakers. And that happens because we all want to belong. And so socially, I had a whale of a time in school, but I don't think I was top of the pick for the headmaster. And in those days, he used to cane you. And so, you know, we got caned pretty regularly. And yeah. All I wanted to do was be a rock and roll singer. That was my ambition.
Okay, I was just going to mention, what did you get up to outside your studies then?
Started a group called the Blue Jets when I was 15. We didn't have a lot of time to practice because we spent most of the time thinking of names for our group. But, you know, I had a remarkable experience. Many years after that, I was about 38 and I was speaking at a law conference in New York. And somebody was buying me the ticket. They bought John and I, my partner from the business, a ticket on Concorde. Only one way, but it was amazing. And as we're landing, I start speaking to a woman. She's short blonde hair. And she said, "Where are you guys staying in Manhattan?" And we said, "In the Hilton." And she said, "I got a car. I'll give you a lift." So we get outside. She's got a car. It's a block long. Bodyguard gets out and we sit in this car. It's got air conditioning. And she offers us a drink. We're from Cardiff. We're like kids looking around this thing. And after a while, my friend says, "Do you mind me asking what you do for a living?" She said, "I'm a sculptor." He said, "Oh, thank you." Now the journey from JFK to the heart of New York is about 45 minutes. And after 20 minutes, he noticed a wedding ring on her finger. And rather rudely, I thought, said, "Do you mind me asking what your husband does for a living?" She said, "Oh, he plays in a band." John said, "Oh, what's the band called?" She said, "Oh, it's called the Rolling Stones." It was Charlie Watt's wife. And John then said, "Robert used to play in a band, but she'd never heard of the Blue Jets." Yeah.
But that clearly didn't really work out. But
No, it didn't. Although our drummer made it. Our drummer, Dennis Bryant, went on to drum for a Welsh group called Amen Corner.
Wow, okay.
That had several top 10 hits. And he then went on to drum for the Bee Gees.
Wow.
He came to see me a couple of years ago. He has a recording studio in Los Angeles. So Dennis Bryan, out of the Blue Jets, was the only one who really made it. Yeah.
And our sound man Mark has an encyclopedic knowledge of all things music.
He would have heard of that.
So he'll be able to tell you all of Amen Corner's hit songs, I'm sure. Yes, he's nodding.
He's
wisely.
nodding. Yeah.
We won't test it because we've got more important things to talk about. But and you met Diane at the age of 7, apparently. So this was still in your childhood.
No.
I know that's a slight exaggeration,
you know what?
but it wasn't long after, maybe.
I wasn't much older than that,
Yeah.
probably because we went to the same Sunday school. My parents didn't go to church, but on the corner of my street was this little Brethren Gospel Hall, and one day Miss Williams, the Sunday school teacher, knocked on my door and said, "Would any boys or girls like to come to Sunday school?" And my mother said he'd like to go. And she took me by the hand and led me down into the world of Sunday school. And Diane went to that same Sunday school.
Okay.
So yeah, we met there
So
when
you
we were
did
kids.
meet pretty young. It's an interesting story. We had another guest previously, a chap called Neil Lambert, who also told us about playing with his siblings in the front garden in that case, and a lady walking past and saying, "Hey, why don't you children come along to Sunday school?"
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
It's just, do you know, they recently asked me to speak at the 100th anniversary of that little church. And as I'm leaving, somebody took my coat. And I turned and a voice says, "Do you remember me?"
Wow.
It was Miss Williams. I thought she was 110 when she came to get me when I was 4. I only just stopped myself saying, "You're still alive." But do you know what? She only ever had 12 kids in her class. But Miss Williams changed my life. She never did get married. She never did have kids of her own, but she had hundreds of children. And I hope over an enormous debt.
Did that obviously led to you at some point coming to faith?
Yeah.
How quickly did that happen? What was the story around
Do you know,
that?
they used to take the kids away once a year to a camp on the Gower, a boys' camp. And there somebody told me some stuff that rocked my world. They told me that I was special. Now, my mum loved me, and my dad never did tell me he loved me or hug me. He was of a different generation, but my mum told me 10 times a day. But even so, this idea that I was special to God, and that God had given me gifts, and that Jesus loved me so much he had died for me, and I could be his hands and feet to other people, this was mind-blowing. And I was very young when that captivated me. Now, when I was a teenager, I went through all kinds of doubts and fears and falling off a little bit, but the seeds of it were in that Sunday camp, the Sunday school camp. Yeah.
And obviously it never looked back, I guess. Did you stay in that little Brethren assembly?
Until we were 28, and after the birth of our first daughter, and that Brethren assembly planted a church on a vast housing estate, and we were kind of blessed to go and help lead it. And I was one of the original leaders there, and we're still there. I'm still there now, over 40 years later.
Yeah, and that's Glenwood.
Glenwood Church, Cardiff.
Oh, very good. Well, I feel like we've raced through childhood a little bit there, Rob, but we do have a couple of questions for you, and another regular feature of the show. And this one is:
What's your fondest childhood memory? What's your fondest of all your childhood memories? What's your fondest?
Oh.
yes. What's your fondest childhood memory of all those memories?
As I said, my mum could just about read and write, but not much more. And funnily enough, they didn't go to church at all, either of them, but she had a deep faith. I can't quite work my way through all of that, but I remember my dad used to go out for a drink on a Saturday night. He wasn't a big drinker, and he wasn't an easy man, but he'd come home merry, and he was a nicer man on a Saturday night, to be honest. He was back in his shell by Sunday. But on a Saturday night, my mum and I would be together, and she would cook something special, and we watched Saturday night television, and my two older sisters were there. And at some stage in the night, me and my sister would go out to buy Mivvy lollies. I don't know if you remember those things, but they were
Strawberry
kind of
Mivvies,
strawberry
yeah.
flavour Mivvies, and sat in front of the fire watching, I forget what we used to watch on television, but Saturday night, we only had one channel, for goodness sake, BBC One, you know. And my dad was out, and I would be with these three people, and the fire would be on, and this incredible sense of security. Those evenings are special. And you know the fascinating thing? When we speak to people now and say, what made your childhood sweet? Nobody ever mentions expensive stuff. Expensive holidays, expensive computers or cars. They say normally these two words: we always did this on a Sunday. We always did this on a Friday night. We always had fish and chips. And for me, that we always was that Saturday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because childhood sort of brings back lots of evocative memories, doesn't it?
And I tell you what I find strange is you can remember certain details of your childhood with stunning clarity. But you can remember where you've left your glasses for yesterday. We used to play a game in our street, little street with a cul-de-sac called Rat Tat Ginger. We all know it. You knock on someone's door and run away. That was okay, except the street bully introduced a kind of a step forward, and you hid in the front garden of the person whose door you knocked. Now, because these forecourts were only about 3 feet and an odd bush was there, this was terrifying. And the first time I did it when I was 8, we knocked on Mrs. Cripps's door, who people assured me was a witch, and I literally wet my pants. I'm behind this bush, and these memories just come flooding back, don't they?
Flooding, quite literally.
Flooding,
Yes, so to
exactly.
speak,
No,
yes.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Okay.
The other thing I was thinking about the other day, is there a smell that you can smell now and it will immediately take you back to a point in your childhood?
Well, I can, but I'm afraid it's not a very. We had a toilet in the garden,
Right.
and I was explaining to my grandkids. He said, "But what happened in the winter when it was snowing?" And I said, well, you had to get the snow behind the kitchen door so you could open the back door, and then you had to dig a trench to the toilet, and then you had to get the snow away so you could open the toilet door. And I said, by then, kids, it didn't much matter. But I still remember the smell, and I don't mean a smell of the poo or the wee, but just this damp smell, and the South Wales Echo there, and the print bleeding on the page. And honestly, it was the South Wales Echo was a remarkable thing. You wiped your backside in this stuff. If you bent over the next day, you could practically read the sports page on somebody's. It was amazing. But I still remember that damp old smell. Yeah.
Yes.
And now you've reminded me of it. I won't be able to sleep tonight. I'll be horrified.
Yes, it's not perhaps the most pleasant of memories, but there we go. Yeah. So you came out of school at some point, presumably, with a few qualifications, or
Not many. I got 3.5 O levels to start with. You got a half for special arithmetic. It was for kids who couldn't pass O level maths but could at least count. So I passed that, and then my mother got a cleaning job and arranged for me to have a tutor in French, and that got me through French. And then I picked up 1 or 2. So by the time, and I got 1 A level. So and that was enough to get me to teacher training college. And I trained to be a teacher, but I had a bit of an experience just as I was about to go for my first job, which changed my life.
Okay.
Well, do you want to know about it?
We may as well. That's what we're here.
May as well, yeah. Okay. Well, I was speaking to a group of kids at the back of church. I was a youth leader, and there was a guy lounging at the back. He'd helped a bit as a volunteer in church, And he just started his own law practice. He just rode up in his brand new Alfa Romeo. He was about early 30s, handsome, tall guy. And he said, that was a pretty good speech you gave just now to those kids. I said, oh, thank you. He said, I'm just started a law practice. I'd like you to come and work for me, and I'd like you to train to be a lawyer. I said, John, I haven't got any money. He said, I'll pay for you to go through law school. And he said, I'll give you a training contract. I said, I'm not sure I've got enough qualifications. He said, you'll be fine. And I said, well, I wanted to be a hotshot lawyer. I can remember, as he's saying it, I can imagine myself in front of juries. And so the words that came next out of my mouth were not exactly, kind of reassuring. I said, I'll have to ask my mother. And and then I realised that sounded pathetic. So I said, and my father, as if that made it better. And so John turned up at my house to be interviewed by my mother and father about my going into law. And my father said to me, son, people like us don't become lawyers. He wanted to keep me from the pain of failure, but I did. I became a lawyer, became a joint senior partner, 10 off his legal practice. We started a legal consultancy that lectured to thousands of lawyers all over the UK and abroad. And so we used to fill the London Hilton on Park Lane with hundreds of lawyers that came to hear us talking about building a legal practice. So it was a fascinating ride, really, in many, many ways.
That does sound like a life-changing moment. Have you ever discovered what motivated John, I think you said it was, to ask you?
Do you know, it's incredible you asked that, Ian, because he goes to our church. He's 84 now. And because I'm writing this memoir of my life and my life with Ronnie, I want to know the answer to these questions. And he was sat 2 seats away from me. And after church, we were having a coffee. I said, John, why did you ask me? And he just pointed with his finger upwards to heaven. And he said, I think it was a God thing.
Yeah.
And so it's not a very satisfying answer, but he obviously saw something. And we were partners for many, many years and close now. And
Brilliant.
yeah.
It is. It's interesting because often when things are, not always, but often when things are God things, they aren't necessarily to encourage someone to be a hotshot lawyer type of thing, are they?
No.
It's
But the honest truth is, sometimes you look back on your life and you see the bits fit together. So people say to me, why did you leave law? Did you not enjoy it? I loved it. In fact, I've loved everything I've done. I've been blessed in that. I've loved the work of care for the family, and all those bits fit together. I wrote a book about 12 years ago called The Hardest Success, Making It in Business Without Losing in Life. And that book got me all over the world, talking to blue chip companies, banks, insurance companies, governments occasionally. The president of Swaziland invited me in to speak to him and the whole of his cabinet for an hour based on that book. Well, the seeds of that were in those seminars with John. So it's been quite a ride, really.
Yeah. So did you feel you got that balance then in life when you were doing the lawyer?
Yeah,
thing?
I still do that. I still do some of that. Yeah, it's under the auspices now of care for the family. But in February, I'll go to South Africa, and I'll be running a seminar there. We run a seminar at the moment on communication, how to be a better public speaker, and I'll run that for the business community in South Africa, and a charity there that works with families will be helped through that. And
Brilliant.
How obvious was your faith when you were doing the legal thing?
Well, I think I'd say if you'd been a delegate at the Hilton on Park Lane to come here, John and I speak on how to expand a legal practice, I don't think it would have been very evident. We were talking about, kind of things like looking after your client base and marketing and advertising, but we always put little hints in. So very often people would say to me afterwards, you believe follower of Jesus, or there must have been enough in there as little hints, and so some interesting conversations. But I can't pretend it was a great evangelistic effort in that sense.
No, sure. It's an interesting balance sometimes, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I got involved with speaking to hundreds of young lawyers who were in their training. We ran a course at the Law Society in Dorset. I had lots of young lawyers come through, and one wrote to me recently, and she said, I was in that seminar where you spoke to us about handling stress and the pressures of business, and I think it might have changed my life. I remember a young girl coming up to me and she said, since I've married outside my faith, my father won't speak to me. And I said, well, ring him up and tell him you love him. He might put the phone down, but love is hard to resist. And so I had all these incredible conversations. I can't say all of them were directly about faith, but I think many of them touched on faith.
Bubbling along. And then famously, of course, you then decided to set up a random charity.
Yeah, well, not quite so random, because I was involved with some guys who were already working in this area, and then I was on a board of another charity that was involved in this kind of arena, and I decided the time had come. My wife Diane had gone through a very difficult time after the birth of our son. Her immune system crashed. She went through a depressive illness. And shortly after that, we started a little group in our home called For Strugglers. It was for those who had lost their faith or had emotional breakdown, and people crowded into that home. We didn't have any clever answers to give them, but I found the power of vulnerability. Sometimes people don't need answers. They just need to know other people have walked that journey. And I said to Diane, I think we could tell people about our experiences and help them and lead them, help the family life. And we were called, there's no other way of putting it, we felt called of God for me to leave the legal practice and to do this. And that was in 1988.
Ah, fantastic. All started in the hairdressers, I think, didn't it?
The hairdressers was second. I think the first one, the legal practice gave me a little office above one of their branch offices, and then I moved from there quite quickly into the exclusive suite of offices above a hairdresser's. Yeah. Me and my best friend, he helped me, and we had a part-time secretary.
And it's gone so well, hasn't it? I mean, we're proud, my wife and I, to be supporters of Care for the Family. And here we are, of course, in the head office, a wonderful head offices here in South Wales. And you've been here for, I think, 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years, yeah.
And you're still looking to develop that as well.
We have offices in Ireland and Scotland and London and Birmingham. And people say to me, well, how did you do it? And I honestly don't know. I don't even know how we did this building. If you said to me, can you come and run a seminar on how you raise finance? I know I couldn't. I literally couldn't. But there have been some tough times as well, Ian. There have been plenty of tears, plenty of mistakes, some regrets. So you can't do anything for 35 years without going through some hassles and pain. And there's been that as well.
Yeah, perseverance is a key skill sometimes.
Yeah, you sometimes just have to keep going, don't you?
Yeah. And then alongside all of that, you do lots of, you talked about some of the speaking. Obviously, you've written, I think, at least 2 or 3 books over the years.
Yes,
possibly more.
I have written at least 2 or 3. No, you're right. I'm not going to take that bait.
Do you enjoy writing? Does that come naturally?
No, I don't enjoy writing so much. But I enjoy. If you told me I could never speak again in public, I would hate that. But writing's hard work. But I'll tell you what I do enjoy writing now. Let me tell you something that happened to me. When COVID happened, I was all my seminars were cancelled. So I thought, what am I going to do? So about August 1920 or something like that. And at the last minute, I applied to do a master's course in creative writing at Bristol University, which I did. And I loved that. I was in a class with 12 kids. I'm writing fiction. I'm writing a novel. And that was fun, being in a class with all these young people. So that reignited my love of writing, because it was just fun. Often when I'm writing in Care for the Family, I've got a book contract and we have to get it done by a certain time. And I'll tell you, I look at every word I write. So in a sense, I take it seriously. So it's not that I don't enjoy it, but it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Yes.
But I did enjoy that class for a year, writing a novel. I'm halfway through a novel.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to buy my novel? Yes.
I'm sure.
It's
everyone
fascinating.
would.
Diane tells me they should be sponsored by Horlicks.
When you're writing, Rob, do you have just one idea come into your head and say, right, I'm going to write a book about that? Because just in reading your books, there's some really fantastic statements all through your books and quotes and statements that you make.
Yeah.
And obviously, do they just come to you as you're writing bits of the book, or do you have a lot of ideas in mind?
No, it's a good question. Sometimes people say to me, how long does it take you to write a book? And the answer is often 6 months and 30 years, because all these memories, they come out and stuff. So I try. People say to me, you tell a lot of stories. Where do you get your stories? I watch, and when I see something, I try and remember it and apply it. Do you know, the other day I was going down Paddington Station, and there was an elderly man who'd fallen, and there were a group of people around him, and I went over, and it was John Loosemore, who paid for me to go through law school. And he had fallen. He's in his 80s. And I say, I'll look after him. And he'd cut his leg, and I bend on Paddington Station. I'm wiping the blood away. And as I do, my mind goes back over all those years. And I remember him saying to me when I'm like 21, why don't I pay for you to go through law school? And I think, how fast. Now, that happened to me, but I remember it. And I'm telling you about it. And I'm telling other people about it to remind us all how fast life goes. So when I write, I try to remember. Yeah.
And we were originally hoping to record this conversation quite a few months ago, I think back in the spring, and then COVID came in and intervened. But since then, you've issued another book. So you've got another book to talk about.
I have, yeah.
Than we would have had last time.
Yeah.
From the Heart, is it called?
Yeah, From the Heart. Where many years ago, Christianity magazine asked me to write a regular column for them. And I wrote for them about many, many things. Disappointment. You know, I think if you're going to go on following Jesus for the whole of your life, you're going to have to hit 3 big disappointments. With yourself, you'll let God down. With other people, and perhaps even thirdly with God himself, you won't get the answer to all the prayers you want. Or I wrote one month on nasty Christians. Why are Christians so nasty to each other? I wrote 50 of them, and we decided to put them all in a book, From the Heart. And so that came out a couple of months ago, and it really is from my heart. I really care about each one of those that I've written about. We take a lot of trouble over those articles, so people say they enjoy the book, so that's encouraging. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's great. So obviously still very busy, still very active. What do you like to do to relax? I mean, I imagine, clearly family has been so much part of your life and part of your world.
Yeah.
Just spending time with the grandchildren, is that?
Yeah, I mean that's fun. We're really blessed that our grandkids are just a mile either side of us. So on the weekend, my little grandson Freddie was 9, and my son, his birthday was just a week ago, and my birthday was just the day afterwards. So everybody got together, 11 of us on Saturday night, and had a Chinese takeaway, and I love that. Just absolutely. But you know what? 18 months ago, we bought a dog. We've got this dog, and it's a cross between a collie and a poodle. I think it's 99% collie, to be honest. The dog's crazy. But I walk that dog, and I just love it. And the fascinating thing about having a dog is that dog owners talk to each other. As you walk, but they actually talk. People talk to each other. It's amazing. And so I'm loving it. I walk that dog most days, and sometimes when my head is spinning, that saves me. Yeah.
I do wonder about that. We've got a couple of dogs, and you're absolutely right. I do wonder what it is about having a dog that liberates one to strike up a conversation.
Isn't it strange?
Rather than just saying hello, if that.
Yeah. Frankly, if somebody walks past me now with a dog and they don't say hello, I think they're quite rude. It's weird. Honestly, I think it's like having a kid at a school gate. Parents talk to each other. There's something about it.
We've got a dog as well. You sometimes have to apologise for your dog's behaviour as well.
You do?
Well,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Sometimes I have to apologise for your behaviour.
There are some challenges. I mean, I walk through a wooded area as well, and so the dog will poo 15 yards into the wooded area, and I'm ashamed to tell you the 2 thoughts cross my mind. Number one, is it far enough in for me to ignore it? And secondly, is anybody watching? Because though there is a combination of those 2 things which will decide what I do with that. But generally, I pick all the stuff up.
Yeah, that is one of life's great moral quandaries, I think. And of course, we know that the Lord is always watching. So
that is so helpful.
There must be something in Ecclesiastes about that somewhere. I'm sure. But and talking of the family unit, you had quite an unusual household, if you like, for quite a while, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Gosh, Dan and I had only been married a couple of years. It was before the kids, and near Christmas there was a knock on our door, and I opened it, and there's a guy standing there. He has all his worldly possessions in a black plastic bag. In his left hand he's got a frozen chicken. And I recognise him. He used to come to our youth club when we were kids. His name was Ronnie. Slightly educationally challenged, spent all his childhood in care, now homeless. And Dan invited him in, and we cooked a meal for him, and we invited him to stay the night, and he never left. He lived with us for 45 years.
remarkable.
He was there before the kids came, and he was there after they left. And when he'd been with us a while, he got a job as a dustman. He was a dustman for 29 years. And I was a lawyer, and I used to go into the law practice and drop him off at the dust yard. And I'd get home, and Ronnie would be smiling. And I'd say, Ronnie, when I get home, you're always smiling. What amuses you so much? Robbie said, when you take me to work in the mornings, the other men say, hey, who's that brings you to work in the car? And I say, oh, that's my solicitor. But you know, guys, I've thought about that. Do you know what I think it was? He never had a mother take him first day of school. And now he's a man, and at last somebody is at the gate. The truth is, we all need somebody at the gate.
Yes. And he shuffled off this mortal coil.
He died 18 months ago. During COVID, had a stroke. And you know, 2 years, I wish I'd done it 40 years ago. 2 years before he died, I made myself say as he went to bed, I love you, Ronnie. It sounded a bit strange, but I made myself, and some nights he would mumble back at me, I love you. And as the ambulance door shut when he was taken to hospital in the middle of COVID, we didn't know we wouldn't see him face to face for almost 6 months. It was horrible. As the ambulance door shut, I yelled out one more time, I love you, Ronnie, and he shouted back, I love you. He died in our arms. We were with him when he died. I was holding his hand, and Diane was singing, Jesus loves me, this I know. So he came into the world not wanted, but he went out knowing he was deeply loved. But I wish I'd started that little ritual years earlier. I would say to all your listeners, tell people that you care for, that you love them. Make yourself do it, even if it doesn't seem your natural style.
It's a wonderful story.
And then, what about your own church life? Do you go to a church regularly?
Yeah, I'm in my own local church almost every Sunday.
Just quietly in the back pews? Or?
Yeah, no, loudly in the front pew. No, I sit in the front. My hearing's going a bit. No, I love that place. It's a bit rough at the edges, but I love that. I love that place, and I really think it's important. I believe church is important, honestly. I'll tell you a little thing that doesn't bless me very much. I don't like it when Christian leaders don't go to church. You write books, you speak at big seminars. We're meant to be together. There's something about being together that matters. It was his idea, this church. So although it may not suit us, the worship might be not exactly as well, the teaching's too deep or too shallow, or the church leaders drive us crazy. Nevertheless, I think it's important, and I try to be there most Sundays. Yeah.
Well, Rob, we're hurtling towards that part of the show where we unpack your perfect picnic, and that, of course, means it's time to play a little game of My Favourite Things.
My favourite things.
Yes, this is a very simple game, Rob. We'll give you a category, and you just have to tell us your favourite thing in that category.
Marvellous. And our first category is always your favourite book of the Bible.
Is Luke's Gospel.
Nice, that's the correct answer.
Is that?
Well done.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
No,
do
I
expand.
just think isn't it Jesus is portrayed as a servant, and I just, there's just some amazing. I mean, for goodness sake, you know, the parable of the prodigal son, the boy that breaks his father's heart, the shepherd that counts 99. 99 is pretty good on a cold Judean hill in the middle of winter, but not good enough for this one. No, he's out looking for the one that's lost. No, I love Luke's Gospel.
Yeah, it's great. So do I.
Old Testament?
Old Testament, do you know what? I like the book of Ecclesiastes. It's a quirky book. At times it reads like an atheistic tract, but I love it. And there's that wonderful poem, isn't there? You know, a time for this and a time for that. And yeah, so Ecclesiastes, I think it means either teacher or philosopher.
Yes, very good choice.
Brilliant. Okay, Rob, we've travelled here this morning across one of the wonderful bridges spanning the River Severn.
Yeah.
So we'd like to know your favourite bridge.
My favourite bridge is the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Bridge, I think, yeah. And because there's something about I don't know what it is. I suppose it's movies and seeing it so often in films. But there's something about going across that bridge in a yellow taxi.
Yes, iconic, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a very stolid structure,
no, it is.
isn't it?
It looks as though it's the business. Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, talking of movies, our third category this season is always your top 5 films.
Top 5 films. Well, I remember watching Zhivago, Dr. Zhivago with Diane. I think we were going out together. I think if I'm right, it was I slipped my arm around her in the cinema. I think it was Diane anyway. I certainly hope it was. Dr. Zhivago, I remember that. I love Shawshank Redemption, but everybody does.
That's been quite popular. Yes.
I love Shawshank. Yeah. Green Mile, I love Green Mile.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not very proud of this one, but I do remember sitting in the cinema thinking, that is remarkable. I remember watching Jurassic Park, the first one, and thinking, I've actually seen a dinosaur for the first time. How did they do that? So although it's not, kind of a great film of philosophy, I remember thinking, wow. And then there are moments in films. I love it in Pretty Woman, where she goes into the shop in Rodeo Drive, and the shopkeeper thinks she's rubbish, and she's, and it all turns on the shopkeeper. And so I love those clips and. Yeah, bits of Laurel and Hardy. I sometimes go into situations with one of our people from here, and I'll turn to them and say, "You made me accept this speaking invitation. Another fine mess you've got me into, Stanley." Yeah. So those,
some good choices there.
Very good. Okay, the next category, Rob, it's a very easy one. It's your favourite grandchild. Sorry, not really. We're actually going to expose you to what we call the Great 8. So, Rob, these are 8 quick-fire categories to help us gain an insight into your world.
Yes, so here we go. Firstly, your favourite author or book?
Me. Yeah. It was Oscar Wilde who said, "If I want to read a good book, I write one."
Oh, there we go.
No, my favourite author, my real favourite author is come on, Dickens.
Oh, okay.
Dickens. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, favourite type of food?
Oh, Italian.
Yeah, very nice.
Okay, good.
Favourite television programme?
Favorite television. Vera. That's so sad, isn't it? I'd like to do that one. Can we do that one again? Newsnight.
That's definitely staying in.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, favourite sport?
Soccer.
Correct answer.
And your team is Cardiff, I presume?
It is Cardiff, but we had a bit of trouble. The police caught somebody climbing over the stadium wall the other day, and they made him get back in. Yeah. So it's a bit of a problem. But no, I am a Cardiff City supporter.
You didn't hurt yourself doing that, Rob.
Your favourite band?
My favourite band is the Beatles, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Yeah,
the
fantastic.
Beatles. I don't think that's a bad choice, is it?
Okay. Your favourite holiday destination?
Italy.
Very good.
Yeah,
Any particular part of Italy?
Yeah, we went to a little place called Diana Marina, and it just had all those. It was one of the first times I'd ever been abroad as a kid, and I never forgot those smells of the pasta and the music, and I'd have somebody singing Arrivederci Roma and all that romantic stuff. So yeah, I like it.
Lovely. Okay, 2 more. Your favourite chocolate bar?
Chocolate bar is crunchy.
Nice.
Oh, good one. Okay, lastly, your favourite board game?
Favourite board game? Well, we've just discovered this incredible new game called Codename. And honestly, it takes 15 minutes to play. I would recommend you sell the cat and buy it tomorrow. Codename, honestly.
Codename.
I have a small number of shares in the company that did it, but only Codename. Yeah.
Codename.
Well done. Okay,
Thanks,
so that was the Great 8. Our very final category, and my favourite things is always multiple choice.
Okay.
I'll give you 3 possible answers. Okay, so we're here today in Wales, renowned for its valleys.
Yes.
So we'd like to know your favourite valley. Now, 3 possible answers, multiple choice. American singer and frontman of the Four Seasons, Frankie Valli. The calming prescription drug Valium. Or Blue Peter icon Valerie Singleton.
Oh, it's Valerie Singleton every
Perfect.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite possible at one stage I was in love with Valerie Singleton. So that is so easy to answer. It's like unbelievable.
Your favourite Valerie Singleton.
I might still be in love with Valerie Singleton, to be honest with you.
Well, I think you came up with just about the correct answers in all of those categories, Rob. So after all that hard work, we have a chance for us to go in our minds to a more relaxing place as we ask you the question:
What would you pick in your perfect picnic if the picking were up to you? Would you be sticking in some finger-licking chicken, or would you be silly and pick Piccalilli? Tell us what
Yes, Rob, what would you pick in your perfect picnic? But before we get to the contents of your picnic hamper, Rob, where would you like to go for your perfect picnic?
I'd like to go into the Brecon Beacons in Wales. There's a little river that runs through it, and this perfect little secluded bit. When the kids were small, we hid a jar full of sweets in a very secluded place, and every so often we go back and see if the jar's still there. It wasn't the other day. Some blind would nicked it and ruined a really great story. So I'd by the side of that river.
By the side of that river.
Yes, yeah.
Very nice. And then we open up the hamper on a little tartan rug, perhaps. And
Do you know, there's something about your roots you can't get rid of, isn't it? So although I'd love to say champagne and canapes and pâté, honestly, big chunk of wholemeal bread, big chunk of cheddar cheese, some chutney, Marmite. You got to have Marmite in there, haven't you? Champagne would be nice, but honestly, nothing terribly fancy. Just those basic things.
It's basically a ploughman's then.
Yeah,
That's
ploughman's lunch would suit me fine.
Lovely.
You could have some luxury bits on the side, perhaps.
Yes, you could have some bit of chocolate for afterwards, a little bit of red
Bit of
wine. What
crunchy.
is it about red wine that makes you want to eat chocolate the second you finish this? Anyway,
So, that sounds reasonably abstemious, actually. I would
it
say.
does, doesn't it? It is
Bit of
abstemious.
Welsh cheddar, perhaps.
Yeah,
Can you
but
get
Welsh cheddar. Oh, Caerphilly. Caerphilly's
Caerphilly.
white cheese.
Yes.
Caerphilly's
Yeah.
white
Yeah,
cheese.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Some Welsh pickle, maybe.
Yes, Welsh pickle. Yeah, actually, you could put it together for me. Then. I prefer you to pick it. Mine
I
sounds
don't
a
know
bit
whether you can
boring.
get Welsh pickle, to be honest, but
Yeah.
there we go. Well, we hope that you get to enjoy such a picnic very soon back in the Brecon Beacons, Rob, and maybe rediscover the sweets container.
Yes.
Maybe they've just moved.
We just watched it. Might have had a bit of flooding or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to the show, and we've talked about the past and the present, so let's quickly look to the future in another of our regular features.
12 years from now, what would you like to be doing? Or would it mainly be the same? Or would you rather be canoeing for example?
Canoeing, just an example, obviously, but we know it's always a bit strange looking to the future, and it's carpe diem and all that sort of thing, but do you have any unpublished thoughts remaining, do you think? As someone once said.
Yeah, I certainly do. I want to finish my novel, and I want to finish the memoir of our life with Ronnie. And I'm working on both those. The memoir mainly at the moment. So I'd really love to finish that. Yeah.
Are there any big ambitions, if you like, that you still have unfulfilled? It's a bit of a strange question, isn't it? Being a rock star.
I'd like to be a rock star.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of a PhD. I'd like to finish that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So that's a bit of a challenge. I'd love to finish that. I'm enjoying that. I'd love to finish that. That would be something, wouldn't it?
So not very busy, really, apart from the speaking engagements and writing 2 books and doing a PhD.
PhD, yeah.
What's the PhD in?
It's out of the English department. It's basically it's about 100,000 words. A part of it is a memoir, and part of it is a kind of an academic look at how you put it together. I'm particularly interested by the effects that being in care can have on children. 20% of the prison population have a background in care. 20% of homeless people have a background in care. Massive percentage of sex workers have a background in care. We do something to kids in care that they never get over, or in their early family life. So what is that? And obviously people do wonderful work with these young people, but there's something that we need. And as my life with Ronnie gives me this 45 years of watching what happens with somebody who's been through the experience and how it can change. And because Ronnie changed, he was kept the job down for 29 years. He ended up working in a homeless centre. We've just built a new wellbeing centre in Cardiff, and they've called it the Lockwood Centre after Ronnie. It's amazing because he was a wonderfully generous person. So I'm trying to tease out some of that research and write about it in a way that can get through to people. Yeah.
Wow.
So you're gathering new evidence apart from that, doing some
Yeah.
research.
I mean, the idea of the PhD, you have to find this sliver of something that nobody else has done. It's very hard because the Bible's right when it said there's nothing new under the sun. Nevertheless, I do have this, when you do a PhD, you do a literature review. You have to work out what other people have written about what you're doing. Well, very few people in the Western world have had the experience of living for 45 years in a family with someone like this, seeing what affects them, what changes them. the power of praise in their life, for example. Diana used to praise Ronnie left, right and centre. Ronnie had never known praise. Ronnie came home one day, he played cricket, he was hopeless at sport. She said, how'd it go? He said, pretty good. 2 runs and almost a catch. Imagine that almost a catch could count, but it did. We found anything we could do to praise him for. So I'm hoping, it'd be nice to finish that, but whether I will or not, who knows?
Yes, it sounds very interesting, challenging. I presume you're reasonably settled in South Wales now. And you wouldn't...
Yeah, I think we live here, but I travel a lot. You know, I'm always on the road. I was on the road last week. I was in Cambridge one night, in Ipswich the next night, St Albans the next night, and next week I'll be somewhere else. So we're always travelling. But yeah, no, I love it here.
So you won't be going off to live in the Maldives or something?
I don't think so. No plans to do that.
Not sure why.
You know, the fascinating thing is you get older, I think your taste becomes simpler. You just want to be somewhere with people you like and people you love, people you can laugh with. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we wish you every blessing, Rob,
Thank
wherever
you.
the life and the Lord may take you. And that brings us to the last leg of the show, where we like to raise the intellectual and spiritual bar somewhat. In a moment, we'd love it if you could bring us your spiritual pearl of wisdom.
Yes, but just before we get to that, we always like to take this opportunity to get our guests' help in addressing bones of contention that have come to our notice in matters of faith and the Bible. And we call this part of the show...
Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Is it true?
Yes, is it true? And on this occasion, our quandary is not directly related to the Bible itself, but a rather wider issue. And so, Rob, we would like to know, is it true that those feet in ancient time walked upon England's mountains green?
It's a very short answer, which I first heard given by David Pawson when I was in his church when I was in law school in Guildford, and the answer is no.
Well, that's such a shame. We have there are. I've always thought it should be a very short song, shouldn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I've made
It's
it
a nice idea.
Yeah. There is word of Jesus going with Joseph of Arimathea to Cornwall or something?
Yeah, that's
wasn't
it.
there?
Yeah. There's plenty of
Any credence in
stories.
that? You think?
No, I don't.
No, I don't think
But
so.
there's plenty of stories. No, I'm with Pawson on that one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We did actually. We've had on as a guest on the show one of David's successors at Millmead Baptist.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the chap is there now. So.
Yeah, Diane and I were there one morning at about 11 o'clock, and suddenly she started having palpitations. So she'd have been about 25, 26. And I said, what's wrong? She's literally going red. She said, look, 3 rows ahead. And sure enough, there's Cliff Richard.
Oh.
Yeah, so so she was very excited by that. I wasn't so taken, but she was very excited.
Yes, I think I've heard in the past about some Cliff Richard shenanigans, as it were. Or
Oh the story of Diane is this: that when she was 17, she used to pray that he'd become a Christian, and when he did, she believed that God would allow her to meet him. So when I was 21, I was a youth leader. We raised some money for Tear Fund, and he was coming to Cardiff, and I was presenting him the cheque. So I said, darling, I'm presenting a cheque to Cliff Richard. Would you like to come? And so she came along. There were all these girls around him, and she said, no, I'm going to trust God for better than that. And about 10 years after that, a friend of mine was filming in Cliff's home, and so he said, would Diane like to come? So I said, would you like to go in Cliff's home? She said, no, I'm going to trust God for better than that. We got to know Roy Castle before he died, Roy and Fiona, and one day, just before he died, Fiona rang me up. She said, what are you doing next Wednesday night? So I said, nothing. She said, come to dinner. We're having Cliff and Bill Latham for dinner, and don't tell Diane. So we get there, and there's tables laid, but nobody, just Roy and myself and Fiona and another couple, and then Cliff turns up, and he sits next to Diane. So she got her prayer answered.
Brilliant.
And she tells me that was a great night for Cliff.
it's worth
But
the
he was
wait.
wonderful. Really, really nice guy, actually.
Yeah. Oh, well, with that, Rob, perhaps you would bless us with your spiritual pearl of wisdom.
It's a spiritual pearl of wisdom.
I think when we begin the Christian journey, we believe that there's a deal with God. It goes something like this: I will follow you and I will serve you and you will look after me. I know there might be little things like flu or occasional failure of an exam, but no big stuff. No friends that die of cancer, no job losses, no marriage breakup, no big stuff. But the honest truth is there is no deal. And if we're going to follow him over the long haul, we sometimes have to hang on in the dark where we don't understand. And sometimes when we say with an old prophet, though the fig tree shall not blossom and there be no fruit on the vine, and the produce of the olive fail, still will I rejoice in you. He is with us. He is with us. But it's a bit deeper than sometimes we make out. And that's a very hard lesson, but also a very precious lesson, and one which I think most of us have experienced in some way or another.
It's a spiritual pearl of wisdom.
Well, thank you very much for that, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Simon, I think we maybe should have made the whole show just one long
I think we should have done,
spiritual pearl. No matter. Indeed, that almost wraps things up for another episode, and I'm sorry about this, Rob, but Simon is a delicate soul, and he gets very upset if he's not allowed to ask what we call...
Simon's Random Question.
Simon, I hesitate to ask, but what is your random question for Rob?
You don't have to worry, Ian. I've actually got a quite sensible question this time. And indeed, I hope it's allowed. It's in 3 parts.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
all right?
Well, give it a go.
Okay, so Rob, how would you describe yourself if you had to use one of the following as an example? First part of the question is, what type of music would best describe you?
Rock.
Yeah, rock. No, that's brilliant. Secondly, Rob, what would be the best fit if you were a type of aircraft?
Yes, that's a very important question.
Oh, I think I don't know, a jet, yeah, because I'm always on the go, yeah. Is that all
Oh,
right?
very good. What about what type? What, a fighter jet or a big passenger
fi-
airliner?
Fighter jet.
Yeah, more like a fighter jet. I tried to think
Yeah.
of something more humble, to be honest. You
No,
know, like
no,
a
it's
cargo
good.
carrier. But I think I'd like. I'm
An
always on the go.
F-15
Yeah. So a fighter
Strike
jet.
Eagle, Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, very
Okay.
good.
Yeah, nearly over, Rob. The final one. Finally, how would you define yourself by way of being a bakery product?
I'd like to be a Cornish pasty.
Oh, Cornish pasty.
Cornish pasty. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes,
I'd love a Cornish pasty right now. I'd like to be Cornish pasty.
that
Yeah.
would be nice. Although your entire world would be full of the smell of onions, wouldn't it?
You're
All
right.
day, every day.
No, you're probably right. So perhaps just a Cornish pasty every other day, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're
Yeah,
probably right.
okay.
Yeah.
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 What about you, Ian?
I
don't
now
know.
have this image in my mind of me in a fighter jet playing rock, eating Cornish pasties, which I will never be able to
There's
get out
nothing
of
better,
my
is
mind
there?
ever again.
That's, it's the essence of Parsons.
Yeah, the title for a book, isn't it?
Oh, dear.
I know what you'd be, Simon.
Yeah, come on then.
Donut.
Gosh.
Thanks.
How
Yeah.
many, do you
Thanks,
guys
mate.
torment people always like this? Is this what you do for a living? You
Yeah,
just can't-
typically.
Actually, and I have to say, it does look like you've been eating quite a lot of
Yeah,
bakery
thanks.
products recently. I'd say, what are you, a farmhouse loaf?
Yeah, thanks. That's no. I think I'm. I don't know what I am. I think of myself as a croissant, perhaps.
Croissant sophisticated.
Yes, many
What do you
layers.
think, Rob? What do you-
Rather classy. Anyway, enough of
Enough
this
of that.
drivel.
Absolute drivel.
Simon, I think once
Yeah.
again you've come up with whatever is the opposite of trumps.
I know.
But that was
Simon's Random Question.
And after that, it is with some relief that I can declare this show complete. Rob, it's been such a blessing to meet you and chat with you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been wonderful to be with you. Thanks a lot. It was fun, wasn't it?
It's good fun, great fun. That's what we like.
That's what it's all
We like
about.
fun.
We do.
And dear listeners, thank you for joining us once again. I hope that you have enjoyed the chat as much as we have. Remember, you can keep up to date with all the goings on at Take a Pew Towers by following us on social media and subscribing to our YouTube channel. We'll be back very soon with another Pew adventure, but for now, it's Toodle Pip from me.
And tatty bye from me.
Join us again next time as we take a pew.